The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 111. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome back to this week's Michigan Man Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Things are quieting down on the Michigan athletic front this time of the year, but the one topic that goes on year-round is recruiting. On today's Michigan Insider segment, MGoBlog's recruiting analyst, Ace Anbender, joins us to take a look at what's happening with the class of 2013, and yes, even further ahead to the class of 2014. So stick around for that. First, let's get things rolling with our view from Section 17, a look at news of interest to Wolverine fans from coast to coast. The biggest news coming from the athletic department recently was the naming of Coach Kim Barnes Arico as the next head coach of women's basketball. Coach Barnes Arico has a sterling resume of success and is jumping right in as the 9th head coach in the 40-year history of the program. So don't miss our next show on May 23rd as we welcome Coach to the Michigan family. She'll be our guest on the Michigan Insider segment, so please remember to join us for that on May 23rd. In other news, softball was rained out last Sunday against Wisconsin, but took a doubleheader from the Badgers on Saturday before the raindrops got here. Michigan will be home this week against Purdue to wrap up the regular season. It's been a struggle, as we all know, for baseball this season, but they split a pair with Iowa last weekend on the road and will be home this week to play Coastal Carolina in a midweek series. Senior safety Jordan Kovacs was recently named to the watch list as one of 42 student athletes competing for the 9th annual Lot Impact Award Trophy. We'll have more on this and softball and baseball recaps coming up later on Wolverine Quick Hits. Up next, though, we get a football recruiting update from MGoBlog recruiting analyst Ace Anbender here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Insider segment today is Ace Anbender, recruiting analyst from MGoBlog, to talk about recruiting, which maybe slows down a little bit, but the season goes on and on and on, doesn't it, Ace?
Absolutely. It's a never-ending process. I know Michigan's already moved on in large parts of the 2014 class, given how quickly 2013's filled up, but it certainly is in a bit of a lull right now at the same time with Ben Gedeon being the last commitment back in on April 10th. Compared to how quickly the class was filling up before, it's a little quiet right now.
And we're holding steady. The last time I looked at 17 commitments, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, the class of 2012 seems to be old news right now. We're waiting until they get on campus. But the class of 2013, which again is holding steady at 17 commitments, is what we all seem to be focusing on. How many additional commitments do you expect in that class between now and the start of the season?
Given the kind of standard level of attrition that you'd expect between some guys not getting their fifth-year senior year and your normal amount of transfers and whatever, I'd expect Michigan to end up at around 23 to 24 slots. So we'll see, 6 or 7 more players in there probably. And Michigan needs to be able to fill slots like that with the need at wide receiver especially and along the defensive line.
Well, right now, the defensive line could use some more help. The offensive line is just, that is an incredible class, as we all know. What are the positions of need right now that the Wolverines are focusing on, and who are some of the names out there that we're recruiting hard at this point?
I would say wide receiver is probably the biggest need of Michigan. I mean, if you look at the current roster right now, there's some solid players on the team, and Michigan certainly did a good job filling needs in the 2012 class with Amar Darbo and J.H.S. and a couple of pretty solid possession receivers. But there isn't really the top flight playmaker, the outstanding receiver recruit. Michigan hasn't had one of those in a while, and they're probably going to take 2 more receivers in the class. Currently, they've got Jerron Dukes out of Columbus, Ohio, committed. He's a 6'4" wideout who can go up and get a jump ball, kind of like Junior Hemingway. But like Hemingway, he's not particularly a burner. So the main guy who's very much the top priority is out of Crete Monet in Illinois, Laquan Treadwell, 6'3", 190. Pretty much everything you'd like to see in a wideout. Can go up and get the football. He's got pretty good wheels, runs good routes. He's probably the top recruit left on the board overall. And then other than that, Michigan's in on a whole bunch of guys, and there's none that really at the current time stand out as Treadwell. Michigan probably leads for. The rest of these guys, it's a little tougher to tell. A bunch of recruits just actually committed elsewhere recently, but one guy to keep an eye on is Devin Allen out of Phoenix, Arizona. He's breaking a ton of state records in Arizona running track right now. He's a remarkable hurdler, and I think he's got the best time nationally in the 110-meter hurdles right now, and he's only a junior. So he's a guy, he's about 6'1", could be a very interesting option as a guy to come in and play the slot. He says he's planning to take a trip through several schools in the Midwest this summer, and Michigan would probably be one of them. So he's another guy to keep an eye on. Probably filling the rest of the class with Treadwell and Allen at receiver would be ideal. I can certainly see it happening with Treadwell. We'll see what happens with Allen. It's still pretty early on in his process.
Another receiver I've seen mentioned on some of the recruiting boards, don't know if he's committed anywhere, is Braylon Edwards' younger brother. I'm not even sure of his name, but I think he's playing out at Chelsea. How is he rated?
Berkeley Edwards is pretty much universally regarded as a 3-star. He's an interesting prospect in that I think if Michigan hadn't taken Dennis Norfleet at the end of the recruiting cycle in 2012, they might be a bit more interested in Edwards. But they're considering that there's not a ton of room in the class and there's a little bit of a scholarship crunch. Edwards is an extremely similar player to Norfleet in terms of Norfleet's more of a running back, while Edwards probably is more of a slot receiver. But they're both guys you'd expect to end up making most of their contributions as a kick returner, as a guy that you give the ball out in space to. They're both pretty small, but pretty fast, agile guys. But Edwards, we'll see what happens. I don't think Braylon helped his brother's cause by kind of trying to put a little pressure on Michigan on Twitter to offer his brother. I don't think that came across very well. Right now, he doesn't have an offer. It's at receiver. Michigan needs guys who are going to be able to line up on the outside as receivers, and Edwards just doesn't have the height to do that. I think he's only about 5'8". So we'll see what happens. He might be a guy who, if Michigan misses out on some of the bigger names, like they did with Norfleet, maybe gives Edwards an offer very late in the process. But I wouldn't expect anything until then, and as it stands right now, I'd be pretty surprised if he ends up in the class.
Well, last week, Ace, Alex Anzalone decommitted from Ohio State, and that whole story was pretty bizarre. But do you think Michigan, as highly regarded as he is, will start recruiting him again?
Well, we'll see what happens, but I kind of expect not, actually. Michigan's already, when they just had Mike McCray committed, a linebacker, Anzalone was expected to come on campus for a visit, and they told him and Shane Jones, who ended up at Michigan State, they were full at linebacker. They were expecting Ben Gedeon to commit, which he did about a month later, and they were waiting on EJ Levenberry, who, even though they missed out on, they were kind of recruiting him as the best player available as opposed to for one of the linebacker spots that they were expecting to fill. So, considering the tremendous haul at linebacker that they had last year, I think the plan all along was to take 2 and be done with it. And Michigan got two guys who are 4 stars across the board. And Anzalone's a very nice prospect. I really love his film, but it just seems like the coaches are pretty set on taking 2 linebackers in the class, and unless they can get back in with him way later in the process, if they miss out on guys, I expect him to end up elsewhere. I know he's looking pretty hard at Florida right now, and it doesn't seem like he's going to stay on the open market for very long. So we'll see what happens, but even though Anzalone's a very good player, I think he ends up elsewhere.
Ace, even though this class has 17 commitments, and as you said, maybe 25 when it's all said and done, do you still think, being that the bulk of them have already committed, that this class is going to remain a top 5 class?
I think so, actually, considering the level of prospects that Michigan is in on moving forward. They're mostly going after the 4-star type guys, and even outside shots at a couple of 5-stars in Sua Cravens and Kendall Fuller. So I'm certainly not expecting them to pull in the 5-star guys at this point. It's a long shot at best when you're trying to recruit top flight players across the country. But considering not only do they have only one of the players that's currently in the class, Khalid Hill, doesn't have a 4-star rating on at least one of the sites. It's going to be hard for Michigan to get bumped down. They might get bumped off the top spot, and Alabama's always out there, and Texas putting together a pretty phenomenal class right now as usual, and Ohio State could make a push, although they're going to take an even smaller class than Michigan this year. But just considering the number of 4-star guys and the fact that as the recruiting rankings have been updated, guys have been picking up higher rankings as opposed to moving down so far. I think Michigan's going to end up with a top 5 class, especially if they can pull in a guy like Ty Isaac out of Joliet, Illinois, the borderline 4 or 5-star running back. I think if he ends up in the fold along with a guy like Treadwell, it's going to be tough for Michigan not to finish top 5 and maybe even top 3.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Our guest on the show today is Ace Anbender, recruiting analyst from MGoBlog, taking a look at the class of 2013, which has been phenomenal so far and is not over yet. But Ace, let's just look ahead now to the class of 2014. And as hard as it is to believe, we're starting to look that far ahead. Coach Hoke and his staff have been out there doing really a lot of heavy recruiting for 2014. When do you expect to see commits for that class start coming in?
I mean, considering the general trend with recruiting where everything is getting shifted up earlier and earlier and guys are making very early commitments and so thus far sticking with them. I think we could even start seeing some action possibly by the end of the summer. I know one guy to keep an eye on is Malik McDowell out of Detroit Loyola. 247 is the only site to come out with in early rankings for 2014 so far. They rated their top 25 prospects, and McDowell came in at 23. He's been on campus a few times. He's an absolute man-child of a defensive end. He's got a Michigan offer in hand already. He's said that they're probably the team to beat, and the rumblings are that he could be a guy who commits early. Now, it's committing before even the summer after your sophomore year of high school is obviously extremely early. We'll see whether guys are willing to make that type of an early commitment and whether those type of commitments stick. But he's grown up as a Michigan fan. He's from Detroit, so if there was a guy who would make that move early and commit to the Wolverines, it'd probably be him at this point.
What positions of need do you think Michigan will be focusing on in that class of 2014?
I think you'll continue to see a pretty big emphasis on the offensive line, even taking a strong class of 5 this year and another relatively large and strong class last year. There's just pretty large holes in the depth on the line. So I think Michigan's already got offers out to 5 offensive linemen in 2014, although one, Andy Bauer, committed to Missouri. But they're in on on the top flight offensive line prospects already. They're putting more and more offers out there. So I expect that to be a point of emphasis. Michigan's also offered 4 cornerbacks in the class, and another one, Jabril Peppers, who's one of the probably quite possibly top 5 prospects in 2014. I'm expecting them to get out an offer to him soon. I think cornerback is also going to be a pretty big point of emphasis. And other than that, Michigan's done such a good job in these last couple classes of really kind of blanketing across the board, filling needs and making sure to fill in depth that there isn't as much of a glaring position of need as there was this year with spots like wide receiver and tight end. So, and that's a huge credit to the coaching staff, obviously, where it allows the team to focus a little bit more on those high-end top-flight prospects. Michigan is certainly targeting those very upper echelon guys early for the 2014 offers that they put out. So we'll see what happens, and it's obviously tough to tell at this stage what the needs are going to be for the 2014 class, just because you never know which guys will leave campus or get hurt. Right now, they're kind of in a position to go after the best players available.
An interesting name, Ace, that I saw mentioned a couple of weeks ago, a possibility for the class of 2014. I don't think he's been offered anything yet, but it's Jack Wangler, son of John Wangler. From what I read, he's transferring from Royal Oak Shrine to Warren De La Salle this fall so that he can play this season with Shane Morrison. Is he a kid that's starting to impress at some of these camps, or is he just getting mentioned because of that last name?
I mean, certainly the last name in Michigan circles will get a lot of attention. I haven't seen much of Jack Langler, so I'm not in a position to really evaluate him right now. But he's a guy who he said in interviews, I believe with Sam Webb at Go Blue Wolverine, that he would go to Michigan whether he got a scholarship offer or just was offered a spot as a walk-on. He's, obviously got the Michigan legacy going and loves the school, and it doesn't seem like he can see himself anywhere else. So I'll certainly be seeing him a lot this fall because I'll be out to see Shane Morris, and he'll be catching passes from him. So it'll be interesting to see how his recruitment goes. And things might change. You never know when a guy actually gets some scholarship offers from some big-time schools, and Michigan kind of sits back and hopes he takes the walk-on offer. Things could change, but right now it seems like he's going to end up as a Wolverine one way or the other. And it's always nice to have those legacy guys come back and continue that legacy. And obviously with a guy like Langler, that's a guy who's remained very connected to the program, and it'd certainly be fun to see a Langler out catching passes this time instead of throwing them.
Yeah, it would be. We'll have to keep an eye on that coming this fall. Let's talk about Shane Morris for just a moment, Ace. He seemed to be a little unhappy with his performance down in Dallas earlier this year at one of the camps. But it seems like he's bounced back nicely at the 7-7 camp recently down in Columbus. Do you think too much emphasis is being put on these early camps?
I think it depends on the situation and the position. With a quarterback, I think it's a little bit easier to put some emphasis on it because you're getting to see whether they can make every throw. And in that case, in a camp setting, not a whole lot changes from a normal game setting except pass rush, which, while important, at the high school level, you're mostly just seeing whether a guy can make all these passes. And Morris did bounce back, like you said. He had a good showing at the 7-on-7, and also secured a spot in the Elite 11 finals, going down there and earned the top MVP honors at the Elite 11 regional in Columbus. So I think with some other positions, offensive line, you don't get to see guys really run block. They're just practicing pass blocking. The same goes for guys on the defensive line. They're just practicing rushing the passer as opposed to holding up against a run block and stopping the run. So there are positions where, especially on defense, playing without pads, you can't really get a great read on how a guy's going to look when he's in a real game situation. But I personally put a lot more stock into how these guys perform during their season at the high school level in a real game setting, just because with a game like football, there's really no way to properly simulate it unless you're actually out there playing full speed. But it's certainly a good sign for Morris that he's bounced back. Even though he was disappointed in that Elite 11 regional down in Dallas, it's not that he was bad exactly. He was a little inaccurate, but he still showed off that he has one of the strongest arms in the country and earned a fair amount of praise. But he's the type of kid who, he's pretty hard on himself. He's got very high expectations, and that's a great thing. But it was good to see that he lived up to his own expectations this past weekend. Well,
I know Coach Hoke says he and his staff don't put much into what comes out of the rating services, Ace, or even, the elite camps or 7-on-7 type camps. But do you think that's the case with most of these big-time programs? I mean, I think some of the coaches say they don't pay attention, but it's got to be hard not to.
Yeah, when you're putting out 100-plus offers in a recruiting cycle, I mean, it certainly helps, at least as a guideline, to be able to see what people who follow along think of it. But at the same time, you see a guy like Andre Pitkins last year, who when Michigan offered him, he was just he was a 3-star prospect and wasn't getting much attention, and he committed, and then a few months later he's in the Army All-American game looking very impressive and ends up as a 5-star. So these coaches certainly do their own evaluations. I know our coaching staff does, and I don't think you're ever going to get a real straight answer from them about how much they rely on those rankings, because part of it, they don't want the recruits to think that they're categorizing those guys based on 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. Once they get on campus, they're all just freshmen. So you certainly don't want guys getting the 5-star treatment before they've ever played a game at Michigan. The rankings are nice. They're a solid guideline, but these coaches spend so much time poring over film and making their own evaluations, and then for the guys who they aren't sure about, bringing them up and having them perform at Michigan summer camp. If they like a guy, they're not gonna hesitate just because he's a 3-star or unranked on a certain site or anything. They'll make their own evaluations, and they're certainly confident enough to have trust in what they see with their own eyes.
Well, I think we can say right now in early May of 2012 that everything is going very well on the recruiting front for the Wolverines. Ace, are you surprised, though, at how quickly Coach Hoke and his staff, and by that I mean when he came in, I think most of us thought, okay, give him a couple of years to really ramp up recruiting, get back as one of the dominant players in the Midwest. But are you surprised at how quickly he has restored Michigan's recruiting base in the Midwest?
Absolutely. I don't know anyone who really saw this coming. If anything, I mean, some optimistic expectations would have been for a class like what Hoke pulled in 2012 to maybe happen in this cycle in 2013 after he'd gotten a season under his belt, and hopefully, I mean, usually on-field results carried over more to the next recruiting cycle. So Michigan's 11-2 record last year was great, but that wasn't what was kind of convincing the guys in that class to join the fold and commit for 2012. That's more something that's being reflected in the 2013 class. But it really just speaks to not just Hoke, but you get down to Greg Madison, Daryl Funk, Jeff Heklinski. There's some absolutely remarkable recruiters on this coaching staff, and the guys also, when I've interviewed players who've committed, every single one of them talks about the family atmosphere at Michigan, and also how much the coaches kind of keep it real. There's no BS. It's all very straightforward. They're not gonna tell a guy he's better than he is, or kind of blow smoke in that sense. They're really they're straightforward, but at the same time there's such an obvious love for Michigan and his coaching staff that I think Rich Rodriguez really liked this school. I think he was happy to be here, but there's a different level of connection between Hoke and Michigan that you can't fabricate, you can't play up. It's just there with him, and I think that has really attracted a lot of these players from the area who see that dedication to the school and realize that's a place they want to be. So getting off to this quick start is, I know that in general the trend has been more players committing early. We see that in this class, but to get off to such a phenomenal start and also bring in such a good class last year, that's something I don't think people saw coming, but it says a lot about the recruiting ability of Hoke and the whole staff. They're doing as good a job as anybody in the country right now.
I don't think that anyone is going to disagree with that. We all have to be thrilled. Our guest on the show today on our Michigan Insider segment has been Ace Anbender, recruiting analyst from MGoBlog, and as Ace and I said at the top of the interview, the recruiting season might have a few lulls, but it is the one season that pretty much goes on and on all year. So I am sure, Ace, we will be touching base with you soon to get the latest on recruiting, and we look forward to the next time we have you back on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks as always for having me on.
Thanks again to recruiting analyst Ace Anbender from MGoBlog for being our special guest today. For the best in Wolverine football recruiting coverage, follow Ace at www.mgoblog.com. That's www.mgoblog.com. Coming up next, we wrap it up for another week with Wolverine Quick Hits, right here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the University of Michigan softball team's game against Wisconsin was rained out last Sunday. The game will not be made up, marking the first conference game lost to weather this season for the Wolverines. The 23rd ranked Wolverines are 36-15 overall, 15-5 in Big Ten play. They swept the Badgers in a doubleheader on Saturday, though, 5-1 and 7-5, and will return home to host Purdue in a 3-game series at the Wilpon Complex, home of Alumni Field. The teams will play at 6 p.m., single game on Friday, May 11th, this Friday, on the Big Ten Network before closing the regular season with a doubleheader on Saturday with games at 12 noon and 3 p.m. Then, of course, the Big Ten tournament gets underway, followed by another appearance in the NCAA tournament. The University of Michigan baseball team split a doubleheader against Iowa to wrap up the three-game Big Ten series Saturday afternoon at Dwayne Banks Field in Iowa City. Michigan scored twice in the ninth and 6 times in the 10th to earn an 8-2 come-from-behind win in the opener, but the Wolverines fell in the nightcap 7-2. Michigan will return to Ann Arbor to start a 2-game midweek series against Coastal Carolina. Actually, that will conclude today. The Wolverines heading into this week's action 19-28 overall, 6-12 in the Big Ten. University of Michigan fifth-year senior safety Jordan Kovacs was named this past Monday as one of 42 football student-athletes on the 9th annual Lot Impact Trophy watch list. Kovacs was a quarterfinalist for the award in 2011 after he earned Lot Impact Week 1 Player of the Week following the Wolverines' victory over Western Michigan. In that game, Kovacs had 10 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. In 2011, Kovacs started 12 games and had 75 tackles, 8 for losses, 4 sacks, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery for a Wolverine squad that finished with an 11-2 record and defeated Virginia Tech, as we all know, 23-20 in overtime in the All-State Sugar Bowl. The former walk-on has 266 tackles, 21 for losses, 5 sacks, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 pass breakups in his career. The Impact Award, founded in 2004 and named after Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, recognizes college football's Defensive Player of the Year who best exemplifies integrity, maturity, performance, academics, community, and tenacity. It is the only award that recognizes both a player's athletic performance and personal character attributes. The Big Ten leads the way with 9 nominees. There are 18 linebackers, 13 defensive backs, and 11 defensive linemen on the list. Voting will take place throughout the season, and the 9th annual Lott Trophy Dinner will be held on December 9th at the Pacific Club in Newport Beach, California. So congratulations to senior safety Jordan Kovacs. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership. Benefits include daily email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our always interesting message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our very own hockey guru, Yostmeister. The Monday Night Live chat is taking a summer vacation, but will return in August when fall practice begins. So join GBMW today and get your daily Maize and Blue fix of news and conversation. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Then each Wednesday you can listen to the Michigan Man podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you are an Apple person, you'll find our app in the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give the show a review. It really does help a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 if you would like to call and leave a comment we can use on an upcoming show. Our number is 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Whatever's on your mind, football, basketball, recruiting, hockey, just give us a call and state your name, where you're calling from, and then let it rip. If you would rather not leave a voicemail but still have a comment or suggestion for the show, just email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. I welcome your thoughts and opinions on anything Maize and Blue. Thanks again to our guest today, MGoBlog recruiting analyst Ace Anbender. For the best in Wolverine football recruiting coverage, follow Ace at www.mgoblog.com. That's www.mgoblog.com. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, beginning this month, we will be on our summer broadcast schedule of 2 shows a month, so we're not going away, just slowing down to enjoy the summer a bit. Weekly programming will resume in August as we get ramped up for the coming football season. Our next show will air on Wednesday, May 23rd, and our special guest is going to be Coach Kim Barnes Arico, the new head basketball coach for the University of Michigan's women's basketball program, so we hope you'll join us for that. So in the midst of your busy summer schedule, don't forget to download the show and take us with you on your summer travels. Thanks again to all of our listeners around the country, and especially to our servicemen and women in Afghanistan who listen to the show via the Armed Forces Internet Service. We appreciate the kind words that you send to us, and we are pleased to be able to bring you news of your Wolverines wherever you are. Don't forget to tell your friends about the show, and again, if you get the show from iTunes, please give us a review. So until Wednesday, May 23rd, when our special guest will be new women's head basketball coach Kim Barnes Arico, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.